Hello. The Bridging the Digital Divide is a presentation on the state of ICT in Nigeria and how ICT can support digital literacy, how it can provide access to quality education at all levels. We already know that ICT today defines people who have and people who have known. There's a wide margin between the people of different economic levels. To bridge this gap, something conscious, something intentional needs to be done in order to bring up people who are underserved, people who are disadvantaged due to income levels, due to geographical disadvantage, can be brought up into the loop. Today in Nigeria, we have a population of about 184 million people. And of this 184 million people, 50%, more than 50% of them are under 30. And the working population of the working population of Nigeria, which stands at about 111 million, with about 85 million labor force. Of this number, 16 million are said to be unemployed. These are people that are doing virtually nothing, and including people that are working below 10 hours per week. Virtually, many of these people earn no income, or they earn income that is not sufficient to keep life. And we have about 18 million people who are working above 40 hours per week. Most of these people are receiving income that is not commensurate with their skills or educational qualification. And some other people are said to be underemployed as defined by Nigeria Bureau of Statistics. 51 million people are said to be employed. But in this 51 million, we also know that though they are on regular income, but many of them are still living below the poverty line. By the statistics available at the website of Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, 12.2 million percent of the unemployed or underemployed people are said to be women. These are women that are willing, that are able-bodied, and actively seeking for employment. But such opportunities are not available. In the last quarter of 2017, between January and September, that's Q3, about 4 million jobs were lost. This is adding to the army of jobless people on the streets. Now, except something is done urgently, of course, these gory statistics have their consequences on the social, economic development of Nigeria. As the population is growing at a very high rate, the economy is not growing in terms with the population. Now we have serious security issues in parts of Nigeria, rise in crime rates from kidnapping, from killings, extrajudicial killings, and to terrorism of Boko Haram in the Northeast. Now, in the few past months, so many people have been killed by suspected herdsmen, particularly in places like Southern Kaduna, Benue State, Taraba, Adamawa State, Enugu, and other parts of southern Nigeria. Zamfara State is particularly fingered out to have an occupied army of criminals who have been terrorizing the state. Now, this has affected so many farm holders, peasant farmers are forced to relocate to other places, abandoning their farms, and sometimes abandoning their crops unharvested due to rising rate of crimes. Now, so many people are moving out from rural areas and coming to urban centers for safety. Now, this is also going to have its own negative consequences on the society. Now, that's not also to discount, there is also effects of climate change, desertification across northern states is also pushing people towards the riverine areas. The resources are overstretched. Horsemen are also moving to where they can find pasture for their cattle, and this is heightening the rate of insecurity. With the world standing at the threshold of the fourth industrial revolution, so many jobs are going to go extinct. They are going to lack any use or any economic value and impact to the economy. And so such kind of jobs that are going out is going to render so many other people jobless. And so the unemployment is going to hike. And there is also lack of capability for emerging jobs. Because as technology is growing, new jobs are emerging. But the capacity of the jobless people is not at the level in which they can take up these emerging jobs. The school curricula, the infrastructure in the school, and the human resource in the education sector is not able to meet up with the challenges of this globalization and technological growth. And so most times the graduates are not able to secure jobs or are made to undergo further training before they are able to secure jobs where such jobs are available. And so there is need for the rejig of the school curricula. The policymakers will have to do something intentional towards repositioning the school system to be able to meet with the challenges that are being thrown up by current developments. Like I said in the opening, internet, ICT is key to development, and access to this is not available to all, and where available, it is beyond the reach of the common man. And so many people are either digital illiterates who are unable to use the internet, who are able to use the computer, who are able to actually benefit from the technology. From records of the Nigerian Communication Commission, about 91 million Nigerians use the internet. But it will be right to also say, of this 91 million, many of them are accessing the internet via GSM. And this is actually not cost effective. The cost of data is very high and beyond the reach of the average man. And so many people are left out of the loop. $20.5 million Nigerians are said to own smartphones with which they access the internet. However, these are not computing devices that can actually provide access to educational material easily. There is difficulty in the use of these devices in accessing educational materials. And so many students, of course, are unable to even afford these devices. So we cannot be, this number, though very interesting, cannot be said to have any much impact on students and pupils who have no access to smartphones. And majority of these people who have access to the internet are actually living within the urban areas. Outside the urban areas, hardly can you find a good number of people who have access to the internet. And because these people are left out of this internet loop, it also means they have no access to education material and educational teaching via the internet. So there is need for conscious effort to be made to make access available to a critical mass of Nigerians who actually will need to use the internet for productivity. Now, about solutions. The government will have to lead in providing this infrastructure. We've already heard from players in the industry complaining about high cost of doing business in Nigeria. So many people, especially people that are laying infrastructure of fiber optics, will have to face the issues of right-of-way from government. The cost is actually prohibitive and is not attracting investors. One solution that has been preferred concerning that is allowing the Dig Once policy to be applied, whereby every road that is constructed or a dock will be provided for players in the industry to be able to lay their equipment without a need to dig afresh or even seek right of way. Another solution to this problem is also co-location of equipments. Like I've mentioned earlier, most of the internet presence in Nigeria is carried by the GSM solution providers, and everyone seems to have his own mast on which communication equipments are fixed. This is not cost effective for the industry. If government should be able to make policy where such equipment will be co-located, it will go a very long way to bring down the cost of doing business. Now, the private sector also have a role to play in providing this access. For instance, in the developed world, we are able to access so many free educational materials. So many companies are providing access to means by which digital literacy can be entrenched. This cannot be said to be the same in the corporate world of the third world countries. There must be a deliberate action to encourage private and corporate organizations to team up with government in providing access to the internet. And by so doing, also content can be developed and be shared. So many NGOs have also critical role to play in bringing this to reality. There are places where internet is available, but then it is not affordable to people to access and to use. For instance, the primary schools, the public primary schools especially in Nigeria, do not have access to the internet. And so this number, which of course is higher than the number in the private primary schools, are kept out of access to the internet. And most people that patronize the public primary schools and even secondary schools are people from low-income earners' homes. And so the divide between the inequalities in economic levels is widening every day because this is not provided. And so there is a role also that NGOs can play in seeing that this problem is ameliorated. In the provision of infrastructure, which the government, the public sector must take a lead, I earlier mentioned the Dig Once policy will bring down the cost of laying infrastructure to provide internet. The co-location, I've also mentioned in the earlier slide, will also assist in bringing down the cost of providing internet access. Now, the government can also provide subsidy or a kind of discount for acquisition of ICT equipment. By this, so many people will be able to have access. In the last 7 years, the government of Lagos State provided tablets for students in public primary and secondary school. And it went a long way in deepening access to ICTs and technology. But we do not have records to assess how successful that has been. But provided this is the government is consistent in this provision, definitely it will go a long way in assisting the undeserved or the underserved people to have access. We are also aware that there are other states that have also copied what happened in Lagos in trying to provide tablets for secondary school students, where all the relevant textbooks are loaded in the tablets and then distributed to students. But even at that, we know there are challenges with electricity to power the tablets, especially for students who are living in geographical disadvantaged areas. In such places, electricity is not available, and the government have not provided alternative source of this electricity. In such places, it is suggested here that solar energy can be provided to power these equipments in order to maximize benefits from them. We also have a means here where hubs can be created. Computer hubs all around the places can be created in order to facilitate access. For instance, the schools can be made hubs where students can all have access to these facilities. And also outside the school, these facilities can also be provided in the neighborhoods, in the communities, and at what levels, depending on how much resources is available. These centers can be established in wards and in local communities. This will facilitate digital literacy in the centers. Teaching can be done in such places, or the students can be placed where teachings can be brought to them from very high-rated institutions of the world. We've seen these successes with MOOC, mass open source learning systems, where educational materials are provided. The pedagogic is also suitable for one to learn at a pace that is suitable to him. And now for places where internet is not even available as at this time, these lessons can be recorded in mass storage and then be taken to such geographically disadvantaged communities and be played for pupils and students to benefit. The issue of sponsoring the investment the government is making in the education sector in sponsoring the teaching staff to other countries to acquire knowledge is a step in the right direction. However, it results to a kind of second-hand information relay, as the time it takes for one to acquire the knowledge abroad and to return to the country at the pace at which technology is developing, the knowledge might not be relevant to the people. So in order to bridge this, internet remains the only way in which these inequalities can be reduced, and the widening gap between people that have access and people that do not have can be reduced. And therefore, people can be able to learn mathematics, can be able to learn science courses, even from their homes or from their schools, or whichever is convenient or available. So this will actually facilitate development. It will facilitate growth in the education sector. It will facilitate reduction of unemployment, as people are equipped with the right skill that is needed in the industry. And this will also help the people to be abreast of developing technology. This way, the manpower that is being developed locally can be, if not as good, but some level good enough to rival the manpower developed in any other part of the world. So Nigeria at this point will need to make a deliberate effort in implementing so many past recommendations that have been made. The ICT roadmap that was developed last year is running behind schedules. The government will have to show the political will to implement this roadmap in order to bring up the mass of Nigerians to be in step with the rest of the world. We cannot afford to be left behind the development that is happening in other parts of the world, and expect to have a society that is peaceful, a society that is developing. We must counter the ills of our society through provisioning of access to education, and not only access, but also quality education. Efforts by some state government, especially the government of Kaduna State, in trying to reorganize the education sector in the state is a step in the right direction. However, internet access provisioning will go a long way in supporting the initiative in bringing down quality education to the children of the masses. I therefore recommend that in bridging inequalities in income, in bridging inequality to access to quality education, in bridging inequalities in embracing technology, there is so much that provisioning of internet infrastructure can do in leveling all these disparities. Education has continued to remain the fulcrum of the Sustainable Development Goals. In fact, the education can be said to be part of every one of the 16 goals of SDG. And so if education is given the right attention, if the right commitment is made towards developing education, the goals can be easily attained and it will surpass past records that has been recorded. This, I feel, is what is needs to be done in solving this problem. Thank you for listening.